Does that mean that you're Steve?
No. No, actually, I guess so.
What did he just call you?
Yeah, say that again. Say it again. I didn't hear that.
My mic's
say it
not
a little bit,
working.
but you got to say it a little bit faster. I want to make sure the world heard that. That's going to be the clip for the beginning.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a new episode of the Super Agile Bros podcast. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Super Agile Brothers, Super Agile Nation, as I like to call it. Thanks so much for tuning in for another episode. It's your weekly doctor-appointed, recommended dose of nerd culture.
All day, every day.
And you don't even need to go to the local CVS to get it.
You don't.
That's right. You don't even have to cough. You don't even have to cough.
We'll give you this vaccine free of charge.
So I was going to say that I'm in the studio by myself, but as you can hear, everyone is here with me today.
We spoiled this joke.
He tried.
It's okay. Hey, I didn't get there fast enough. It's on me.
He took too long, yeah.
Too much silence. We gotta hear. We can't live without hearing ourselves talk.
Yeah.
It was like 30 seconds tops.
I work from home and literally, I just pause the music sometimes and just yell so I can hear my own voice.
Well, I'm constantly talking to myself. Shailene, my wife, she's very much accustomed to me having full out discussions. Okay, so if I do this and da. So yeah, I don't need coworkers. I'm me. I'm my own coworker.
She's right.
Team
there,
of 10.
So don't even acknowledge anybody else.
Wait, you had to introduce us. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
That's all right. So yeah, I'll go ahead and introduce the fellas. I'll introduce you guys, even though everybody already knows you're here.
Thanks.
We'll start off with you, Steve. How's it going, bro?
Oh, no thank you. I'm married.
That's unfortunate. I guess I'll move on then. Brad?
Hey, what's happening, brother man? I love how Steve's he doesn't care about the introduction. He's here for one purpose and one purpose alone. He's like, all right, I got a joke. I'm ready. I don't know. Oh, actually, I'm not 100% sure, but that must be his Arrested Development joke section.
No.
I'm not sure.
The intros? Ooh.
Yeah, well, maybe. That would actually not be a bad idea for the future. No,
you gave him ideas.
That was not from Arrested Development.
Okay.
I wouldn't know. But anyway, today's topic, we're going.
Wait! Before we go to today's topic, I need to stop us before we do anything because I might forget to ask this.
Okay.
I need to ask you, Steve and Kyle, did you receive my package?
So moving on to today's topic.
No. Answer the question for the people.
A freak UPS accident where my package was run over multiple times. Multiple times. They didn't say why it happened multiple times.
By your car?
It was cataclysmically damaged.
That's why it's a freak accident. It was my car.
Yeah, I just received an empty package. No idea what contents were inside.
Well, let me ask you guys. I don't want to take too much time on today's episode. What do you think might have been in that package if it went for empty packages or freak accidents?
Well, I was wondering, maybe he got us a t-shirt or a Super Agile Bros memorabilia or sunglasses or something.
Something better.
Yeah,
to commemorate our familyhood.
I was expecting anything other than hate mail, but that's what I received.
Oh, you're saying it was... Oh, I guess I did it through mail, so is that considered a federal terrorist attack?
I feel attacked.
Yeah, I didn't expect for there to be white powder inside the envelope when I opened it.
It might feel like white powder in your lungs, in your eyes, particularly in your eyes. But it was something great. I need one of you guys to say it because I can't say it. You have to say it.
So I opened up the package and showed it to Mrs. Yams, and she was appalled as well.
Yeah. It was a beautiful, seductive even, Blu-ray package. But inside is a horrible secret.
A physical copy of something that we thought was wiped from the face of the earth. Or you could only hope.
Yes.
The E.T. video game.
On
Blu-ray.
On Blu-ray. Probably would play better. Honestly. Just use your controller.
It plays exactly the same.
All those pixels to render all those 6 polygons.
You know what? This is what I'll say to our Super Agile Bros family and nation. What I did for, Kyle and Steve was me.
You did this to us.
Following up on a promise
Yeah.
that we made to you. Like that we're all in. I want to make sure that people know we're all in.
Something that I know that everyone who heard us was very excited about us following up on.
Yeah.
Very excited.
Yeah.
All right. One of you guys have to say it.
All right.
We're like somebody's gonna just like, man, I hate this podcast.
They've already stopped listening.
Y'all can do paper, scissors, rock, and by
I'll just do
mouth.
it. I'll do it. Brad saved me the trouble of tracking down a streaming service or Amazon or whatever, and he bought us both, and I presume himself, a copy of Avatar and The Last Airbender, or is it just The Last Airbender?
Game of the Year edition.
Movie of the Year edition?
No, Game of the Year.
Director's cut.
Director's cut. Zack Snyder. Yes. I've been thinking about it, and I've been like, nobody's been saying anything. We've been like dancing around this issue, and I was like, I know what's gonna happen if I say, hey guys, let's do The Last Airbender. We need to watch it. Everybody's gonna go, what streaming software, network? I don't know. It's only on HBO.
I don't have a VCR.
Exactly. So I said, let me just go through that. And surprisingly, the Blu-ray is very cheap.
Surprisingly.
I'm not surprised at all.
Wow, how astonishing.
Surprisingly, it was very cheap. Free shipping because of Prime. So, yes, we are all now equipped.
Joke's on you. I don't have a Blu-ray player.
You have a PlayStation 4.
Dang it,
you have
I
a
remember.
Blu-ray player. I thought about this. I thought this through. I said, does Steve have a Blu-ray? And I was like, oh, wait a second. We all have PlayStations. There's no excuse.
Why do I want to watch this movie on Blu-ray?
Because you want to see high definition Avatar action.
I want to see every fingernail and the outstretched hands of Ong as he reaches for my heart.
Yes. You need to experience it. They got Dolby surround sound. They got a VR mode. They got everything. You can even watch it in Fortnite. So it's like
In
Fortnite.
No one told me that. I gotta play Fortnite now.
Ong and Sokka are in Fortnite.
Suka.
So anyway, I had to pull that out now because I knew that, we got to end now. We got to close it out. Like, nah, sorry, beginning. So anyway, back to you, Kyle.
So we're just going to do a review of the box art. We're not actually going to watch the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of the box art, I'm going to say this really quickly. Somebody really did hate it because I received a DVD and it was already broken. The case.
The case was broken. The case was broken.
The case is broken. I'm not sure if the movie plays yet. I need to test it. But like, it was lit. I thought I was I was like, maybe it's something wrong when I was like touching it in the package. Nah, they broke the whole case. Like somebody knew it was in there and threw it on the ground and stomped on it.
I'm not confident that my perfectly pristine copy will play.
It's just a bootleg. Like some dude. Like honestly, the Amazon store is just a dude at a barbershop with his trunk open.
Hey kids, want some Avatar?
He wants some Avatar, man.
Y'all like air?
$3. Y'all like air. Anyway, Kyle.
All right.
So yeah, look forward to that coming in 2025. We're gonna watch that movie. But today's episode has nothing, thankfully, to do with that atrocity. But we're going to be talking about something more practical in the gaming area, gaming sense. We're going to be talking about traditional games. So that includes things like tabletop games, board games, card games, physical games, things like that.
Games that are not video games and not sports.
Yes.
Not sports. Okay. I know you're going to get into this, but I just want to ask, is solitaire considered a traditional game?
Yeah, why not?
I think it started out as a card game, right?
It's literally a card game.
Yeah.
Okay. So if it's a card game I played only on the computer, it's all good.
Dang, that was my loophole was I play solitaire on the computer.
Ooh. So yeah, that's a good question. Because I did want to go into, I guess, the transition that some traditional games have made into the digital space. But
okay, I'll withdraw my question, counselor, or whatever, judge.
I'll say this. If the game was mostly left unchanged, like if you could play it exactly the same with cards, then I would say it still counts.
Okay.
Sure.
Because a lot of these ports have added things that you simply can't do in real life.
Okay.
Really?
Fair enough.
I would love to talk about that.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
We can talk about it.
Okay. So anyway, sorry, just had to ask a question.
Cool. Yeah. So I guess my initial question to you guys then will be, and maybe this will kind of tie into that maybe a little bit. When was the last time either of you guys even played a traditional game? I guess maybe even outside of digital, but I guess as well as digital.
Okay. I'll let Steve answer that first.
The question is, when was the last time I played that traditional game?
Yeah.
Not too, or pretty recently, I think. Definitely the one I can think of immediately not for Christmas. I guess it was Thanksgiving. Last time I went home, I played Catan with my mother and brother. Settlers of Catan, or Catan, if you will.
Catan.
That's a household favorite. I actually used to play that a lot back in high school. All of my friends would play it. We finished our math class finished early in the year, so like the last, I don't know, week and a half of school, that whole period was just like hanging out and staying out of trouble for the most part. So we played a lot of Catan in school too. Oh, wow. And I got so fed up with it, man. Like, it's a fun game. I just kind of got tired of it. Oh, and then we played in college too with Jordan.
That's one with the resources, right?
Yes. Should I explain? Should I go ahead and do that?
Sure, why not? Yeah.
Brief explanation. There's no point in getting into all the rules of all these games.
Give us
Settlers of
Catan.
Yeah. Well, Catan isn't even that complex, to be honest. There's a lot of games that are ultra complex. Settlers of Catan is a game where each player has or controls settlements or basically villages and cities on a small hexagon or map, and the map is divided in hexagonal zones. And every turn someone throws a die, and everyone collects resources based on the die roll and luck. And then you use your resources to expand your empire. So building roads, building more villages and cities. And the point is to get to 10 points. You're awarded points based on how much you build. And you get to 10 points before anyone else. And that's how you win. That's the gist of it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how I remember it.
But it's something that I think escapes that explanation is that there's a lot of focus on trading and cooperation and competition, because resources are not evenly distributed, and so inevitably some people will have something you want, and you can make trades on your turn. You know, my least favorite trade would be futures. People like, if you give this to me now, I'll give you 2 of these later. I'm like, don't do that. You trade what you have.
IOUs.
I draw the line.
The stock market.
Yeah.
Truly.
I played that game a good bit with like my youth group, and it can get pretty heated if people don't want to trade.
Yeah.
I honestly, I don't even know if like, is that a rule? Is that like a house rule, or is that like the actual rules that you can trade?
Trading is a rule.
Okay.
I'm sure.
Like it's built into the game. Yeah, because I feel like it's always a little bit like suspect.
That's fair. I mean, there's definitely some trade. So like, one of the rules of the game is that if at any point anyone rolls a 7, which obviously is the most common roll statistically speaking, then anybody who has more than 7 cards in his hand loses some number of cards. And so Jordan, our handstand guy from last episode, or 2 episodes ago, I think, he would have a ton of cards in his hand, and he would basically say, hey, if you do this for me, or if you hold cards for me to lower my hand, then I will, give you a card or something like that.
Ooh.
That's so
And to me, I was like, that is not allowed.
I don't think that's allowed. That's house rules. That's hood rules right there. That's not even house
keep
rules.
track of that.
Yeah.
That reminds me of another game, Monopoly, where it's just like where you start doing like, look, I won't make you pay rent this time. If the next time that I land on, you know what I'm saying, or like da 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 da.
Well, I think in Monopoly that kind of makes sense because Monopoly is supposed to feel like capitalism, and that's, if nothing else, like capitalism lets you do anything you want.
But I mean, I feel like Catan, that makes sense too. It's about expanding your empire, building your towns and villages and infrastructure, and you kind of have to make deals in order to make that happen with neighboring nations who might be competing for the same resources.
That's fair.
I think that game is super duper fun because, like, to me, like games like Catan, I love games that fundamentally frustrate people.
Of course you do.
Yes, to me, like it's a part. Like I feel like it's a part of the human experience. Like it's interesting because you watch people's characters really start to show through like a game like Catan or Monopoly, right? Like, what do you do when you're on top? What do you do when you're at the bottom? What do you do when you're in the middle? You know, and just watching people's characters play out, how they start to sometimes attack each other if it's advantageous to themselves, or sometimes just capitulate, like, whatever, like luck's not on my side. You know, it's kind of, I think, a reflection of our society as a whole. I'm getting deep, but like I think it's very interesting. And just, I'm gonna say this, I think one reason, well, first of all, I remember Steve saying, oh, I don't like Catan for whatever reason. Now it makes sense because he played it all the time. And one time our church, what was it, singles group and campus group went on a trip to Galveston, Texas.
Oh, I remember.
We were all hanging out in an Airbnb, and we played Catan, and that game literally wouldn't end. It literally got to the point where I think I just had a headache, and I was like, "Look, son," just like one of the guys was like about to win, and I was like, "Look, son, I want you to win, and I want this to be over with, so I can go because I have a headache."
Was it me? Did I win that?
I don't think it was you. I think it was Dave or somebody.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, like I remember it was just like everybody trying to get one individual to win. Like I want to win, but my head was hurting, and I was like, it's been like 4 hours now, and we were playing with too many people. Like, and we had messed up the game a little bit, so that like it kind of forced a stalemate. We weren't following one of the rules. I can't remember what it was. So it was rough. And I cannot convince Shailene to play Catan with me.
Yeah, I remember Shailene and one of the other girls were like asleep. They were like, you know, angry asleep, you know, when they're drowsy and they're angry.
Ooh.
And their whole face is just expression.
That's a rough mix.
Yeah.
So is that the latest game you played too, Brad? Catan?
No, actually. So the last time I played a traditional non-video game based game was actually Wednesday of this past week. And I mean, me and Shailene play board games fairly regularly. Like, it depends. Sometimes we're just in the mood, so we play more often. I think we'll probably be playing more often in the coming weeks and months. But so yeah, the last game we played actually was chess.
Ooh.
So and that was actually the first time we'd ever played chess, and it just happened because of another game that I'll talk about later that led to the suggestion of chess. So yeah, I mean, board games and traditional games, like, to me, I just enjoy competition. I enjoy losing. I enjoy winning. I think like life is better when you know that there's something at stake, you know? And I sometimes can be a sore loser. I think I'm human. But overall, I think like I'm okay with losing. I'll always talk trash though. Know that. Like,
to the end.
That's
confirmed.
true.
You know, like, even when Shailene's beat me, I'm like, you know, I'm still the best at this game. And then she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I've only lost once. She's like, once? I'm like, that's the only one I remember is this one. You know, like, I'm going to talk trash. It's
selective memory.
But it's not actual, like, how I feel. I'm just goofing off because I'm a fool. So, yeah.
Fool of a took.
Fool of a took.
I should say, before we continue, I should say that we did just talk about solitaire. I mean, I play solitaire almost every day. No lie. I usually play it during our stand-up meetings. Yeah.
What?
You
heard it here.
Last day on the job.
70% of a stand-up meeting doesn't have anything to do with me, and I can fully hold a conversation and like follow. It actually helps me focus because it's such a low-grade task that I can like do that and not feel like I have to be reading or like fiddling around or something and like losing focus on what's happening. So
what I'll do for you, Steve, is I'll bleep out that section just so.
No.
Leave it in.
None of my coworkers listen to this anyway.
That's what you think.
Not yet. Yeah.
Steve's coworkers will see you in the comment section.
Yeah.
In 2 years, when I'm ultra famous, they'll go back and they'll be like, "He did what?
Did what?" I mean, by that time, we'll be getting, I don't know, sponsored by Honey Baked Ham, and all different types of places. So you'll be good.
Butterball ham.
Butterball.
We'll get sponsored by both. They'll fight over us.
Butterball turkeys and Honey Baked Hams and Boar's Head. Like, okay, that's really interesting. Just meat products. But anyway.
Sponsored by all the meat. Popeyes.
Anyway, I play solitaire. That was my little aside.
That's nice. I don't know the last time I've played solitaire. I used to play it a pretty good bit too. Because I had it digitally. I never had the patience to like line up the cards.
No, it sucks.
In real life.
I've done it once, but it's not that fun.
I can't shuffle either, so...
Actually, the only time I think I've played solitaire with cards was when I was having one of the worst vacation summers of my life.
Oh, no.
And
nice.
It was because I'm sorry, I just got to share the story. But
so was it like a last resort?
It was, we went to my aunt for Christmas. I mean, for me and my sister went to my aunt for
the summer.
a summer one time. And it was just that it wasn't a place, like, her house was fine and she's fine and everything was good. It's just that it wasn't a home for children, if that makes sense. Like, no cable, no board games, nothing to do in the neighborhood.
You can't eat the candy on the counter.
Yeah, and then we had like pretty strict like timings of things throughout the day. And the only thing we could do is like play with my little cousin in the basement with, I think she had cats at that time. So we just watched the cats like for hours on end. And like, it was.
What year was this?
This was
19.
It was the year, man. Oh man, I'm sorry. I don't mean to take away and take off the subject, but this is so real. It was the year that Star Fox came out for N64.
Oh, I'm sure you were just desperate to play.
Yes.
Oh, and what made it worse is that my brother had like the best summer of his life. He was hanging out with my other uncle, and they were going everywhere. They were hanging out. He was a little older than us, so he could do more stuff like in general. But he also was home when we were with my aunt, and Star Fox came out, and the Rumble Pack was just coming out.
Man.
And the commercials were fire for Star Fox 64. And I remember I could see the commercials, even though we didn't have cable at my aunt's house. It was just it was literally like 5 channels, and most of them just played, what's that show, House on the Prairie? Like, that's the only show that was ever playing.
Black and white TV shows.
Yeah, but the commercial for it was coming, and I would literally watch that commercial and just feel the pain of not like being able to experience it. Like it's visceral. Like it's visceral. Man,
that's how I feel about Elden Ring.
Ooh.
Nobody's withholding Elden Ring from you, boy.
That's
you
true.
can make the time, man. Don't be playing nobody.
You can play it if you want to.
You can play it during your stand-ups.
No, I can't.
All they talk about is how you don't have a maid or something, so you don't need to have the sound on.
You're good. You're good.
I might as well just play the text adventure version of Elden Ring.
Yo, that's probably pretty fire.
It's just line after line of "you died, you died."
Spaces and you died. Did y'all see that somebody's making Elden Ring cart? Was that you who shared it? Did somebody share that?
What?
I don't know anything about
Elden Ring cart? Like Mario Kart?
Yeah, I don't know where I saw it. I think it was on Twitter. I'll share it with you guys after the podcast.
That's so foolish.
It's confirmed that it's getting built. I don't know if it's by FromSoft, but
100% doubt it's from FromSoft.
You don't think Miyazaki or whatever his name would do it? Like, come on. I think it would be fire.
Dark Souls cart. Huh.
So would
So
it
how does
be
how does
multiplayer? How would that?
how do you translate like the feeling of the Soulsborne games into a Mario Kart experience?
So the
Is
carts
that-
would be
how,
really slow and heavy.
how do you like how do you transfer the feeling of Super Mario Brothers into a kart game? You don't. You make something fun. That's all you need. I don't. You know what I'm
They
saying?
did put Sonic in a cart, and it makes no sense.
I would argue that Elden Ring isn't always fun. It's just very satisfying. Well, let me do that. Soulsborne games are more about the satisfaction than they are about like the fun of the moment to moment mechanics. Is that not fair?
So maybe the game is all about like the tracks are obscenely difficult. Like you
Right.
can't like get through like
Can't
to
just
beat
drive.
it. It's just over and over falling into holes and restarting at the beginning. So like winning, just
Ooh.
finishing is like winning.
So
Yeah.
every race or every lap is a gauntlet.
Mhm.
And it changes, constantly.
And the
Yeah.
tracks the tracks are randomly generated, but they're generated out of sections that are familiar.
Yes.
So precise.
Because for each section you'll know the timing of when to move left and right and stuff, but you won't know what's coming next.
Yes. And then eventually somebody will release a video of like, I beat every track on the first try with no, without having to
25
restart.
minutes. Yeah.
When you get like hit with a banana or a mush or a shell or something, you explode, obviously.
Yes, and then you have to start over. But if you get to the third lap and then you fall in a hole, you got to start over at the beginning.
Ooh.
Okay, maybe not that vicious.
No, that's on brand.
There will be. I don't think Dark Souls games are that vicious. They're vicious, but at least they give you like campfires or whatever, so you can save your progress. Like it's not purely destruction, so you can get a campfire.
So maybe you can hit. Maybe it's all the tracks or those one-offs where it's not laps, but it's a beginning and an end. So you can hit checkpoints.
You get 3 dodge rolls per race. You can regenerate them by picking up specific items, but if you die, you lose your dodge rolls. You have to pick them up again when you go through the lap again.
And what if your cart isn't like when we think of like a go-kart, it's just literally a cart that you have to drag, so it just makes your life more difficult. Like,
so you're running and pulling it?
Yes, you're running and pulling it. So it's literally the worst possible like setup for a game. Like
Yeah, you're just this skinny, frail, skeleton-looking dude in a loincloth pulling a cart like Sisyphus pulling a stone up a hill, like just desperately struggling.
What's the name of the treasure chests that are alive and eat you?
in Souls games?
Yeah, or just in general. Mimics. Yeah. So I was gonna say some of the question mark blocks are actually mimics.
Insta kills. I mean, that'd be on brand for a cart game. I mean,
is there a blue shell equivalent? If you're in last, can you kill who's in first?
Like one of the dragons from like Dark Souls. Like you a dragon just comes and just lays a fire blast on you.
You just send a Rathalos, because that's the only dragon I know.
I guess back to you, Kyle. You never said what the last time. I mean, we went on a mad tangent. Sorry, everybody. But you were saying something. You never said what your last game was that you played.
Yeah. So my last game, I think, was a game called Masterpiece. Have you ever heard of that game? It's super old.
Literally have never heard of that.
Yeah, I hadn't either. So these friends of mine, they live about an hour from us in Slidell. Great friends. My brother Jordan. It seems like we have mutual good friends named Jordan. That's pretty cool.
Hilarious.
This is a different Jordan. No relation, I'm sure.
No relation.
But he and his wife bought this game called Masterpiece. I think it's from like the 70s. And it was in really, really good condition. And so it's like a super simple game. So there's just these cards in there. And each of them has a painting, like professional painting of the Mona Lisa and all those. And there's another set of cards, and all these have prices on them. And the objective of the game is to get through the game having the most paintings that are worth the most amount, but everything's randomly generated. And so I can't remember the mechanic exactly, but anyway, the price that the painting has and the price that you can bid for it are different. And it has like the bank. And so you have the Monopoly style money where you can spend this much to bid on it. Oh, the auctions. That's what it is. So you're auctioning against everybody else that's playing, but you don't know the actual value. And so it's kind of like if either of you guys have played.
Oh.
Now I'm drawing a blank on this game. Animal Crossing. Red comes and he brings fake paintings, right? And you can buy them. It's kind of like that, right? But so you can buy it thinking that it's real, but then when you actually purchase it, the value it had on it is like $5. And then the number goes from like really small up to like 1 million, I think is the highest. And so there's a lot of the secrecy.
There's like fake paintings? Or they have low, like Mona Lisa could have a low value. That's what you're saying. Oh.
Yeah, but you don't know all this even after, like, you purchase the painting and you're the only one who knows the value after the auction.
And then at the end of the game, everybody puts down what their masterpieces are to see who has the highest value, I assume.
Yeah, but in between all that, you can actually put up yours for auction. Like, you can sell them. And then there's also other cards where somebody can buy one of your paintings for a set amount. And so if they want to buy, if the card says they can buy it for $250, but then its value is $600, then you lost a really high value painting and they paid a little bit for it, type of thing. And so the combination of your money and the paintings you have left are what determines who wins.
So just total value. Interesting. So let me ask you this: could you, for example, have like a painting? Let's say it was worth $1 million. But you only had $500. You bid $500. Nobody else bid higher than you. So you could buy that painting for $500, even though it's worth $1 million.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, because nobody knows the value of it during the auction.
Wow. So you said this was from the 70s? I've never heard of this game ever.
I think at least the 70s. They said it was a super old game, and you can tell when you're looking at it that it's old, but it holds up really well. It was a whole lot of fun. Wow. Stressful too, because the further you get on, the less money you have, and so like the more money that's kind of out there in the wild. You don't know. Like, other people have 4, 5, 6 paintings. You don't have any. It can get pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's wild. You know that game like makes me think about how like in some game. Well, so I feel like we play video games a lot, right? Like all three of us, but I think the thing about a traditional game, a board game, card game, is that it, especially when you play with other people, there's turns, right? Like your turn, then your turn, then your turn. How can a game keep your attention when it's not your turn? You know what I'm saying?
Like, you're asking us, or you're just thinking out loud?
I'm just saying that's like, to me, I mean, y'all can disagree with me. That to me is the marker or a moniker or whatever the phrase I'm trying to use of a good board game or traditional game. A game that can keep you engaged even when it's not your turn or you're not currently playing. Like, some games, like Egyptian War or Rat Screw or whatever it's called. Like, that's always happening, so like, okay, cool. But like a game like chess or Masterpiece or whatever it is, like it has to find a way for moment to moment to keep you engaged. And I don't know if y'all felt that feeling too, because that's like the thing I think about a lot when it comes to board games and stuff like that.
So there's two things that come to mind, right? One is that a game could probably have like a specific mechanic where even if it's not your turn, you're still participating.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in Catan, you can trade, or you can accept trades with whoever's turn it is. And you're collecting resources when they roll their dice. And so you still feel somewhat involved. So that's one way. But I think what a lot of games rely on is not that you're involved when it's not your turn, but that you have to follow the action when it's not your turn, because then when it's your turn, you'll be able to act. Whereas if you're not paying attention when it is your turn, you won't be able to act. You'll have to catch up on what you missed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think that relying on people being engaged because they have to follow the action, is fair, but probably naive, because how many people do you guys know you're playing a game with and they're just on their phones, or they're just checked out, or they're talking to somebody, and then it gets their turn and they're like, wait, what do I do? Like, what's going on?
Oh, what happened? Who did?
Yeah.
Oh my God, dude. I can't deal with that. But I don't think that's a bad game. I think that's just bad game players, right? People who can't focus, or who are distracted, or are bored, or whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know if that makes the game bad, though.
I blame the players in that scenario. Like, I think, because I've been in, I guess, different scenarios where people have, I guess, been not fully engaged for different reasons. You know, either somebody asked them to play, there was an open slot, they didn't want to play, or they did want to play, but then they're like, oh, I didn't think this game would take this long, and so then they check out. But either way, in both of those, I still blame the players.
There's probably some games that really are so boring where, like, there's no point in paying attention, because even if you pay attention, you're not going to be much better prepared for your turn, or it's not that exciting, or there's not much like drama or tension. And yeah, I think Brad's right there. Like, that's a marker of a bad game.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm on the fence, because, like, I get that. There's definitely people who just, like, I don't want to be here. You know what I'm saying? And those are normally the people you have to force to play a game with you. Like, hey, come on, let's all play. Like, all right, whatever. You know, they're already, you know, but I guess it's the same thing if you're, you know, we were talking about that guy who plays Smash Brothers and it's trash, and he's going to complain about the game because he has the wrong heart going into it from the beginning. But I also think, like, there's games that do a good job of, you know, even though, like, for example, if you play, say, chess the right way, right? Like, you know the rules and you know what's going on, and there's a timer associated to it. Like, chess can keep you engaged because you have to kind of pay attention. And in between your moves, you're thinking about your next move, right?
Yeah.
And not that everybody's going to enjoy chess, because chess is not for everybody, just like not every video game. But I've also played games like, there's, you know, I buy new card games every once in a while. And every once in a while, like, they're interesting when it's your turn, but there's literally nothing for you to do when it's not your turn. You know, it's like, you just sit there and you have to wait for the results, because it doesn't matter if you plan ahead. All your actions are dependent on the person's actions right before you, and there's no, like, nuance. So
yeah, that's a good example of what I meant, where I think that's just a bad game, or at least a bad game to play in a big group.
I think another thing that kind of contributes to the engagement is when it's somebody else's turn, and you kind of touched on this, really how much it impacts you. Like, on one side of it, if you're just spectating to see what you can do whenever it is your turn. But I think if their turn directly impacts you while they're taking it, then that can also be, you know, another way to maintain that engagement. You know, like, I guess, like Uno, I guess, you know, it's more of a fast paced game, but what people are doing is actively impacting how you can play the game. And so there's not really a time you can check out. And then, I mean, I guess you could, like, look at the last card that was put down.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's what Brad is saying, is that Uno, that's a good example. Nothing matters in Uno except the card that goes before your turn.
Yeah.
That's a fair point, yeah.
I mean, you could vaguely say, oh, well, if you're playing the rules where, like, if you put a times two, draw two, and then another draw two, and another draw two, that, like, okay, but honestly, like you said, it doesn't really matter. You're just trying to, like, do the best thing for you in the moment to get your cards out your hand, you know?
That's true.
But I think that Uno, the reason Uno gets away with it is because of what you described, Kyle. Like, it's a fast-paced game, and you don't have to have, like, a lot of deliberation. Like, yes, every turn matters, but they're not like a chess move where, you know, one mistake could literally ruin your whole game, you know, or at least turn the tides, you know.
There's not a lot of flexibility in how you play Uno. Like, there's generally only like 2 or 3 good moves you have to pick from.
Mm-hmm. And then there's luck, what cards you happen to have in your hand. So it's like, the conditions are,
So I have a question. And we talked about masterpiece, right? And I was thinking when you mentioned that, I'm like, man, it's crazy how they managed to gamify auctions in the art world. But of course, that's one of the things that we always talk about with, not us, but people talk about with video games, is that the vast number of ways that people have found to gamify random stuff, like things you would never
Yeah.
think. Like Papers, Please is a game. It's a teaching tool too, but it's a game about managing, expectations versus your conscience in a bureaucratic scenario. Like, who would have thought that'd be fun?
Yeah.
I'll tell you who. Nobody. Just any situation where like there's an optimal solution or what you think is optimal, people have learned to gamify. So my question is, do you think like traditional games are better or worse, or in what ways are better or worse at video games at gamifying things?
Ooh.
Like
That's a
maybe a
good
better way to ask it would be like, what's the most creative gamification example in a video game versus the most creative in a traditional game that you can think of? Like, how do you think they stack up?
Huh.
Yeah.
Tough one.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kyle.
No, I was gonna, I guess, continue to talk about, I think Papers, Please is a great example of how you were saying, because on the inside of it, it's like border control and all these really like heavy topics are in there too. And then biases, and then you're dealing with things like fraud. Like it encompasses so many different things, And so yeah, for a traditional game to do auctioning, for Monopoly to do like housing and capitalism, as we said, all those different things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know that I guess digital games kind of have in theory, more resources at their disposal.
Mm-hmm.
Like they can put more, they can give you more, I guess. Because one of the biggest hangups, at least for me, when it comes to traditional games, is setup. And as I kind of mentioned this earlier, with Solitaire, it's putting things out there. And so, like, I think digital games are stronger in the way of, like, presenting something that's really, heavy like this, putting you in a scenario, is that they do all the setup beforehand. And then you just have to go in and experience it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, like, I don't know if I can even compare them, because I just think that, like, fundamentally, like, games are not, like, at the end of the day, games are like rules that, it's kind of like a joke, right? Like, you make a joke, and a joke is funny because it's kind of not, like you don't make a joke about, like, oh, somebody sure did a good job at work today, and people laugh. Like, you make a joke about, like, a crackhead trying to run for mayor or something, like, because it's kind of like, oh, that shouldn't really happen. So it's kind of weird that the scenario. And I feel like games are like how the rules are set, and what makes the competition or what makes the goal of the game can be for anything. So I feel like a lot of times, like, think about like chess or something, or checkers. Like, checkers is the most low, like, what? Like, it's just red, black, and a square thing, like some squares. Like, it doesn't have any context that makes any sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's fun because the rules, it like cause like competition and challenge. And I think, like, board games and video games just have different ways of engendering that. And like you said, Kyle, I think a video game has more tools, because just like in a movie can, like a live action movie versus an animated movie. An animated movie can take a lot more liberties what people can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like how they bend, how they move, how they, interact with the environment. But you're limited in a real movie with real people, what you can do if you don't use CG or something. And I feel it's the same with board games. I don't think that either one of them does better at making, like, the mundane interesting. I just think they have different limitations. So you couldn't do Paper Please as well in a board game, because a board game, you can't mimic the feeling of having people and their emotions and their situations and the environment and the context and the weightiness of your decision. You know what I'm saying? Like,
okay,
that's kind of how I feel about it, at least.
So you're saying that you guys are saying that video games have a leg up on traditional games because they have more ways and resources to essentially tell a story or like do something other than pure game mechanics.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I think, yeah. Highest level. I mean,
Okay.
on the side of board games, in my opinion, I think the closest contender would have to be like, Call of Cthulhu and Dungeons and Dragons tabletop games that, use boards and cards and physical currency, but
Advanced.
advanced tabletop games. Because the distinction is, these other games, you box them up at the end, where games like D&D, they're continuous, they're non-linear in a lot of ways,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think like a good way to think about it is that a board game could never mimic or evoke the emotions that Mario Kart does, because there's just no way to have people race each other in a safe environment in their living rooms. You know what I'm saying? Like in with multiple people at the same time with varying conditions. And I think like something like D&D or what have you is kind of like how I feel about like artists. Like an artist can look at a blank canvas and see things that I can't see. Like I only see a blank canvas and and the mistakes that I'm about to make. But like an artist can see like, ooh, I could put this, and I could do that, and I could do this, and I could do that. I think like video games just like make it an even playing field. Like you don't necessarily have to have an imagination or a vision to understand a game. But like a board game, you kind of have to fill in the gaps.
It's more suspense of disbelief.
Exactly. Like, yeah.
So I think those are good points. I think one aspect that tabletop games have over video games, at least over most video games, is the ability to draw in a larger crowd, right? Like most games, they're single player. Maybe you can have 2 or 4 people playing together. But those tend to be, few and far between. But with, a lot of table games, they're like, 2 to 6 players, easy. Some of them go up to like 8 or 10 players. And those games usually take advantage of the high player count. So I was playing a game recently, and I think it's called The Great Dalmuti, or something similar. And this is a game about classism. So everyone who's playing, based on where you sit around the table, is in their own class. So you have someone at the head who's basically like royalty, and then you have someone at the bottom who's basically
a peasant,
a serf, a peasant. And the game mechanics revolve around this relationship. So like the top 2 people, the beginning of every round, whoever's the top 2 takes cards from whoever's in the bottom 2.
Oh wow!
And the whole game, the point of the game is to move up in the ranks by getting ahead of other people. And we had a lot of fun. It was a great time.
And so the people at the top, their goal is to maintain the top, I guess.
Yeah, your goal, you have to maintain being at the top. And the people at the bottom have certain, if everyone agrees, you can have like a revolution to overthrow people. We played like 5 or 6 rounds. There was never a revolution, but there was tons. It was actually really funny. The guy who owned the game, we were in his house. Of course, he becomes the Great Dalmuti very early. And he stayed in that seat most of the night. And people would always become the minor Dalmuti. They'd be right next to him. And then they would last for 1 round and they would get shuffled back into the crowd. Eventually, I became the minor Dalmuti. And I was the first one that I guess pleased him. He was really playing into the role. He was like, yes, the great Dalmuti bequeaths upon you this gem. He was really just playing it up.
Yeah.
He loves his game. But I was the first minor Dalmoody, second in command, that he felt didn't try to betray him. But I was also the first to dethrone him.
Oh.
Yes.
So at the end, he lost his crown, and I didn't become the great Dalmoody. Someone else did, but everybody was cheering.
Let you get too close.
But that's an experience that I don't know of a video game that really, defines that player versus player cast based, gameplay mechanic.
I think like video games, how like we've talked about smurfing and online multiplayer video games and like all of that, like that culture. I think and something you always share, Steve, which I highly agree with, is that like multiplayer games can be difficult because the meta is always changing. Like a developer can change how many bullets shoot out of a gun or how fast the character can move. And so all of a sudden you have to rethink how you're going to play or approach something, right? Mm-hmm. I think board games have the advantage in that they're pretty static, right? Like when you play Monopoly, if you play it today or 10 years from now, the rules are the same.
Yeah.
The pieces are the same.
Monopoly's not getting patched.
Yeah. Like
house rules aside.
Yeah, excluding house rules. Like the rules of any game are 99% of the time stay the same, right? And that means that meta is like that's the only thing the game really survives on is a high level meta. So like your friend who is a great Dalmoody, they know the meta, or he knew the meta. So he knew like, oh, I know how to get to the great Dalmoody and stay there. So like he's using the meta. But as people learn the meta, the game becomes more interesting. And the people who gain the meta, they don't necessarily lose that ability, They might forget how the game rules work or anything like that, but the meta is kind of a constant that they can always tap into when it's time to play. So I think board games have kind of this like timeless nature to them because they allow you to always tap into that meta. They allow you to always be like it's like a bike. Moment. Yeah. Like you can just get right back into it, just like it was yesterday. And I think video games will always suffer compared to like the board games or traditional games because they're always forever changing rules. And then also just a side note, I think video games are just less accessible because like the interface, right? And board games, just any person can sit there and move a piece. So yeah.
It uses things you're already familiar with like immediately. If you have any figures and they're pretty much toys, cards are just sheets of paper. If you can read, you can play a board game. Well,
I mean, technically you're right. Actually, yeah, okay, I'll give you that because I guess the analogy here would be the controller, and yeah, some people aren't familiar with controllers. But I guess where I differ is that, or I guess I should point out, maybe not a difference, that one way that video games and traditional games are the same, opposite of what you just said, is that they both they're accessible to some extent. They both require people to learn the mechanics. So even if you know the controller, a new game will require, even if it's a shooter and you've played a dozen shooters, it might be totally different from what you expect.
True.
And there's always like a transitory period for a new game too. How many times have you sat down with a really complex game and like had to read the instructions like 3 times because it just didn't make sense, and then you have to have a practice round, and that's just like video games. People are like, what do I do? How do I do this? What does this button do? It's the same thing.
Well, I would only disagree that I think that's the meta, right? Like the rules and everything and how you deal, like to learn stuff, like not that that's the meta, but that's the rules. Like games and board games and video games have the similarity in that they all have rules. But how you interface with that game, there's a higher barrier when you have to understand the rules and then you have to understand how to interact with the game. Like think about playing God of War versus Spider-Man versus Mario Kart. They all have rules. And well, let's not use Mario Kart because that's a different system. But like, Overcooked. Like they're all on the same system. They all have different rules and they all have different controller layouts. So you have to like learn how to change your mind to understand how to interface with the game and also understand the rules. And so there's a lot of steps for a person to step into. Monopoly versus Scrabble versus chess, it's just the rules. But at the end of the day, you just move the piece with your hand or you say something with your mouth, which you already know how to do. So like the skills you already have, you know, like
right. I think that's what I was saying. All right, that's how I took Kyle, what he was saying too.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much all aligned. Yeah, the barrier of entry is.
Yeah, so the interface is different, but for a video game, it wouldn't be rules; it'd be mechanics, right? That's the same. Learning the mechanics of a video game and learning the rules of a traditional game both take time, but the interface, one takes time, one doesn't. Are we in agreement there?
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, you know,
and then there's the meta, which also takes time for both.
Yeah, and I would say this about video games. I think meta is really only an issue now that we have online games. I think in the past, like, you can still play Smash Brothers Melee like it was yesterday. I mean, yes, the dexterity and the interface, right? But the rules are the rules, right? Like, there's no updates coming for Smash Brothers Melee. But, like, every game that exists nowadays can get updates, and then when you go to the next version of the game, who knows if the thing that you like, for example, I love I'm blanking on it, Mass Effect games 1, 2, and 3. But if you try to like play them back to back, you have to like relearn everything, and things change, right? But if you play Monopoly, Falcons Monopoly versus Simpsons Monopoly versus, you know, like, they're just skins, but the game is the same, you know? Like, it's...
Yeah, I mean,
I will say Fortnite Monopoly is very different.
Do not pass go. Do not build a house.
It has building.
You have to build.
Yeah, it has building in it.
It's wild. Like Fortnite now.
I don't know if I want to mess with that.
It's true.
I
can't recommend it.
It's just normal Monopoly now.
Monopoly with guns.
I want the shotgun piece. It's just a silver shotgun on a stand.
You have to loot and like,
move it around.
Hot
the board.
Drops in Monopoly. Like, oh my goodness.
So I actually would not discount the meta in single player games. I think whether a game is single player or PvP, it still has meta, right? Mechanics in a video game, the mechanics of the game just describe what you can do. Like, you can move around, you can do this, you can push this. Whereas the meta is like what works well in order to get to your goal.
Yeah.
Like, you can play God of War tons of ways, but you should probably fight the enemies, right? Like, that's at least the first part, the most obvious part of the meta. Mm-hmm. And it's when you get to multiplayer games, that's when people think about the meta, because the meta, now you're fighting people, and you have to actually be smart about it. But it's still the same concept. What works well? That might change over time, but you're still thinking what works well against people. And I think it's the same with traditional games. You know, when you're playing Chick-a-Pig, like, there's lots of things you can do, but there's only a few options that are actually good options. Or, you know, chess or checkers. Like, you can move around to your heart's content. The mechanics will let you do that to some extent. But the meta tells you what you should do. And that's what people have to learn over a couple rounds, maybe some practice rounds, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, just imagine if board games had regular updates to their rules.
Bro.
Their mechanics, right?
Yeah.
Like a normal video game or like an online game. Because let's be honest, how many traditional games are like single player? You know what I'm saying? Like Solitaire, like
it's in the name.
There are, I can't remember any names of them, but like I've looked at the game sections at Barnes and Noble, and some of them do say 1 to, you know, like 6 players. But yeah, I still don't understand how you could play them one player, but they'll say you can.
I recall playing a game where like one player in the game was just essentially like, it was just modified rules. It wasn't the same game. It was just a different game within the same kind of subset of rules. So yeah, like, it was a different game entirely, really, you know, because you can't really, like, for example, Chick-a-Pig, which okay, Chicken Pig is one of my favorite games, like
Mm-hmm.
of board games. Me and Shailene played Chicken. So, really quick story. Me and Shailene played Chicken Pig on Wednesday. Like Shailene was like, "Hey, you want to play a board
Wow,
game?"
that is a quick story.
It is. We want to play a board game, and I was like, we were playing Rumicube, a few weeks ago. Hold on, y'all still there? Okay, cool.
I'm here.
My computer just decided to go. Let's go, boop boop, turn off. I was like, what's going on? Yeah, we were playing Rumicube, and then I was like, oh, let's play something else. So we played Chicken Pig, and then because we were playing Chicken Pig, I was like, hey, we should play chess. I think we'd like to play chess. So anyway, Chicken Pig is basically this game where the whole goal is like you have these little pigs, and your goal is to move across the board to go through the goals on the other side of the board. But the chicken pigs can only move like in one direction, like forward or
slide.
Yeah, they can only slide left or right, forward or backwards. And if they run into some type of object, they can't progress. And you can do different things as strategy. It's kind of like planning ahead and defense and offense. It's a super simple game, super simple like idea, but it's very, very fun, especially when you have more than like two people. Like me and Shailene play against each other, but when you have like 4 people, it's very dynamic. But I feel like Chicken Pig is like the type of game where I don't like, you can play it by yourself. I think there's a 1-player mode, but it just doesn't like some game. Like I feel like traditional games are fundamentally like multiplayer. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
because they don't come with ways to play against the game most of the time, like an AI, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. There
is one game. It's not really. It's a pretty simple game, but the way it's hard to describe. It's a series of like levers and stuff. Basically, it's a bunch of clockwork that reacts to the choice you make, whether you put the coin in slot 1, 2, or 3, basically. And the idea is to like have all your coins. I don't know. Basically, you're solving a logic problem, and the game uses clockwork to react to you. So you, based on what decisions you make, you might win or lose. And there's like a specific strategy that you kind of have to luck into. Most people, but that game isn't built to compete. Like, oh, let me have fun. That game really was just built as an oddity. Like, oh, look, this thing can beat you. If you make the wrong decision, it's gonna win. There's no way to win after that.
Is it like a puzzle? Like, would you say it's more of a puzzle than a puzzle game, I guess?
No, that's like I said, it's hard to describe. You basically are dropping either a coin or a ball into one of several slots, and that's what it is. There's 10 balls, and every time your turn, you can drop 1 to 3. You choose how many balls you can drop. And then the game will choose whether it drops 1 to 3 balls. And I think the point is to like have the last ball or not have the last ball or something like that.
Interesting.
But if you make any mistakes, the game will always beat you. Because it's actually a pretty simple like logic problem to decide what the optimal solution is. And so somebody designed that optimal solution into a series of clockwork. So based on what you do, the game knows what to do.
Oh, wow. So you can never make a mistake. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
perfect run.
That's pretty hardcore.
Yeah. That's the only situation I can think of where.
So you got me thinking about something, and I think it's kind of, maybe it doesn't lead off of that much, but the idea of, I guess, puzzles as being the opposition, like a 1-player version of a traditional game. So on the spectrum, I guess, between traditional games and digital games, video games, where do escape rooms fall?
I guess
because it's like a series of puzzles, I guess, right?
I mean, I think it's a puzzle game. I mean, I think it's.
It's a puzzle game.
I feel like it's hard for me to say that it's like, for example, if you did an escape room, did a particular escape room and then you came back like the next day, you could finish it almost like in 5 minutes, right? Like excluding like forgetting something because of memory, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, every puzzle is like that.
Not every puzzle, because if you did a puzzle, like a puzzle with jigsaw puzzle, right? It doesn't matter if you remember anything about the game. Like every experience is like starting from scratch, right?
Because they're mixed up, yeah.
You know, you might have a strategy. You might go, oh, I'm going to get the dark pieces, or I'm going to get these light pieces. You might be able to optimize a little bit, but like your memory of what the puzzle looked like, the jigsaw, I'm talking jigsaw puzzles particularly, like doesn't affect it. So I feel like
I think I disagree, but
I feel like puzzles to me aren't like games per se. I think they're more just challenges, and once you figure that challenge out, it's like a riddle. Once you know the solve a riddle, it's no longer fun because you just know the solution. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So are you arguing that an escape room is not a game?
I think an escape room is a game as long as you don't remember what the solutions are.
It's a physical riddle.
Yeah, it's just a long form riddle. And I don't think that personally, this is my personal opinion, I don't think riddles are games. I think they're fun, but I don't know if it's a game. I mean, I'm kind of on the fence about this myself, but that's my feeling in the moment.
So I feel like that's the same for all puzzles or video game or puzzle video games or any like puzzle game. If you know the solution ahead of time, then you can just, I mean, you mentioned a jigsaw, like aside from the time it takes to physically find a piece and put it where it goes, if you somehow had incredible memory and knew and recognized every piece and knew how they fit, then yeah, you would know the solution ahead of time. It would just be a matter of methodically putting the pieces together the second time.
But I think that's, I mean, I guess the only way that would make sense is if the puzzle was already finished, right? Like,
well, you finished it the first time. I'm saying you played a second time.
Yeah, but you're like removing a particular part of the puzzle to like it's different from saying it's like saying that like you do a riddle and a riddle is like missing words. So like you somehow can't solve the riddle unless you have those words. So you have to find the words. Like unless you have everything, like what I'm trying to say is like a jigsaw puzzle in particular, the fundamental premise is that the puzzle pieces are randomized, you know? So even if you flip every single piece over, you still have to do logic to like remember, okay, I got to look at this and then, okay, where does this go? Okay, this is an edge piece. Okay, boom. You know, there's still some like game element. I don't even know if a jigsaw puzzle is a game because it's hard. It's like, that's to me where I don't know if escape rooms fall personally into a game at all.
I would say if we're making, if we're making this comparison, I think a jigsaw puzzle specifically, is not a game because the mechanic, quote unquote, of a jigsaw puzzle is literally just comparing two or more pieces and saying, do these fit? Yes. Do these fit? No. And you just do that thousands of times. And that's fun. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Whereas an escape room, the puzzles are much more complex and challenging by themselves. So you have like the smallest possible challenge multiplied by 1,000 versus, 3 or 4 meaty challenges. Is that,
but
you think, fair?
Game? I mean, I get that. I
think it is. I think both are technically games. I would say that a jigsaw puzzle is maybe too simple to be considered a game. You just multiply the simplicity by 1,000.
But they both have, I guess, the makeup of a game. Like, they have rules, right? They have pieces of the game, if you will. Like, it's contained. You have to, in a jigsaw puzzle example, you have to use these pieces to recreate the image on the box. Mm-hmm. And, so And then the solution, I guess, is the win condition. If you reach it, you win. If you don't, you lose. So I think on the highest level,
you lose.
I think on the highest,
you can't really lose unless you quit. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And so quitting it, is a lose condition too. So I think on the most fundamental level, a jigsaw puzzle would be considered a game.
Sure. And I would still argue that, like any other puzzle, if you had incredible memory, if you could recognize that two pieces immediately go together or don't go together just by looking at them because you've done it before, then I would say that you have... who does a puzzle twice? I've
done puzzles like 3 to 4 times. I can so yes, I do. I'm that person.
Yeah. Okay. Well, fair. All right. I did when I was young, but I don't do puzzles at all anymore. So
he's grown out of it.
I've grown out of puzzles. Actually, that's not really fair. We've talked about doing some puzzles in my household, so that might be in the future. But yeah, I think, with a puzzle, and this was a big if. I said if you memorized every single piece and all their relationships, even if you randomized them and threw them around, if you just picked up 2 random pieces, you could immediately know, and it's just a matter of finding the pieces you need. Like, that's a big if. It's totally fine to play a puzzle again because no one's brain actually works that way. Mm-hmm. So that's great. But I think in theory, it's the same problem as any other puzzle, which is, I've already solved this. I know how it works. It's just most puzzles don't have as many disparate pieces as a jigsaw puzzle has. The solution in a Portal game only involves like 3 pieces maybe. And so if you've played it once, you can probably remember how that worked.
So I do want to say this. I think that a puzzle, like in a puzzle game, I think are different. Because, for example, let's take Portal. Portal is about solving the pattern, right? So you can solve the puzzle element of a Portal game, but you still have the game element, which is the rules that are how you move, how you interact with the environment, how you jump, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't just because you know how to solve the puzzle doesn't mean that you will solve the puzzle, if that makes sense.
But I think rules are mechanics in video games. That's what I said earlier. Like, you use the mechanics to solve the puzzle. The mechanics are the puzzle, usually. Yeah,
but I guess the puzzle in Apex Legend is solving how to shoot a person in the head in every simple scenario, right? Like,
I wouldn't call Apex Legends a puzzle game.
But that's
I don't know if I can go with
no
this.
no I agree with you, but I'm saying that, like, fundamentally everything has a puzzle element. Like, how do I fundamentally solve this problem in a repeatable manner, right? But I think where a game takes in is that, like, you can, like you were saying about an escape room. An escape room has a lot of small puzzles in it that are like encapsulated and like make different things. But I think the difference between a game, a video game, or even a board game is that just because you can solve a particular puzzle at any moment doesn't necessarily mean that that's the solution to the win condition. You know what I'm saying? Just because I know, like, when I play chess, there's like, how do I stop this player from taking my piece? That might be the puzzle that you need to solve. But that doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to get to the win condition unless you solve like 50 of those puzzles all the way to the end, right?
So
kind of where I'm trying to land is that, like, in a escape room, unless they are changing how the puzzles interact with each other, I don't feel that it's a game. Because if I can go back, when you go to an escape room, they make you sign a waiver. Don't tell anybody how this game is done. Because they fundamentally know if you go and you tell somebody the solution, it's not a fun anymore. Because there's no variability in how you complete the tasks. It's
the same with Portal, though.
But I think I see what you're saying. I feel like so let's say Portal to a escape room is the movement, how you walk through the room, right? But like, unless Now I think escape room would be more of a game is if they put physical challenges where you have to like balance, or you have to figure a way how to navigate through a space with 3 players, and depending on their body types and stuff like that, there, it's a game. But if you could just walk up and solve the thing, I don't think that's a game.
I've actually recently done an escape room that I think, so their whole gimmick, if you will, is that they break the traditions of escape rooms, because I think that's kind of the expectations of escape rooms is that they're low intensity, low physicality. If you can solve the puzzle in your mind, you won't have to do anything physically to like bring you there. It doesn't involve any dexterity, no hand-eye coordination, no accuracy. And so what I say, the escape room I recently did actually did involve skill challenges as solutions to puzzles. Like, so hopefully somebody's not listening. They're about to go do this escape room, but it was themed around a carnival. And so in the first section, there are 3 carnival games. There's skee ball, there's duck fishing, and there's this section where you have to throw these tennis balls at a rack and knock certain targets down. Things that and it tells you the solutions. It says knock 3 of these down, make this amount of points in skee ball, find the duck that has the certain symbol on it. But knowing the solutions on their own, typically in the escape room, that would be enough. It's like, oh, okay, let me go find the duck, right? That's probably the closest one to a traditional one. But the other one, the skee ball, makes 700 points, but then it was a full skee ball thing. So if you're not accurate with your throws, you can think about 700 points all day long. You're never going to get to the next step of the escape room.
Sure. I think the issue, I'm glad you brought that up. That's an interesting data point, Kyle. I think the issue I have with your argument, Brad, is that you're describing the difference not between a game and a non-game. In my head, you're describing the difference between a puzzle game and a platformer game, right? Because, like a Mario game, like it's all about the movement and the physics and how you get from point A to B. There's not really much problem solving. Whereas Portal is very light on platforming. Like, you are moving around and interacting with a 3D world, but there's not a ton of like coordination skill checks. It really is like, can you just, make these things happen to make the solution happen? And I think that's how Portal specifically and other games like it are similar to an escape room, a traditional escape room. And I think that when you add other elements, that would be what Kyle is talking about. You have an escape room with skill checks, and that's more. I would say that Kyle's escape room is less an escape room, first of all, but whatever. Kyle's game is less like a puzzle game and more like a platforming game.
Well, I think I would,
but they're both games. They're all games.
I think I would disagree with you on the Portal, because I've played Portal, and honestly, sometimes the most difficulty I had in the game was not solving the puzzle. Sometimes I know exactly what I needed to do, but I lacked the ability to do it. For example, I need to shoot a portal on the ceiling, and I need to, in mid-flight, shoot a portal somewhere else so that when I land on the ground, I can do something else. Like, to me, that is not something you could just solve the first time, because every time you do it, you have to use those skill sets of movement and timing and shooting, because you know what I mean. There's definitely puzzles within Portal that are timing and dexterity and like that kind of base.
But compared to other games, it's very light. That's what I mean.
So what I mean is that, like, I think a game can have puzzles, but I don't think a puzzle is a game. Like, I think that Portal is a game that has a puzzle element and a platforming element, the mechanics that make the game. But I don't think that an escape room is anything other than a puzzle, excluding what Kyle just shared, which is kind of a game with a puzzle mechanic and a skill mechanic, which is a game. I think like an escape room is fundamentally just a puzzle. Once you know the solutions, it's no longer a challenge. It's just a thing that you're doing now. It's here you go, point A to point B. And so I agree with you in the puzzle, like a jigsaw puzzle. Like, I don't know. I've been on the fence about it since we talked about it. Like, is a jigsaw puzzle really even a game? I don't even know. Like, it's kind of a weird thing. But I think you're right. If you knew every piece and how every piece connected, then you could finish. Like, if you gave a robot a puzzle, it could probably finish it in 5 seconds, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you gave a robot, and
puzzle.
Portal's a little bit. Portal's a little bit different because it's a digital interface, so in its code, so it's like different. But if you sent a robot to go play a traditional escape room, it could probably solve it in the time that it could move from point A to point B. But if you sent it to the escape room game that Kyle was mentioning, it would have to have like a whole nother set of abilities to be able to do skee ball and throw the dart, and you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just different. So my whole argument is that I think a puzzle is not a game, but I think a game can have puzzles in it. You know, if that makes sense.
So what about the really simple puzzle games that are like, you know, you just connecting dots in a certain way, or, you know, you have to, like the mobile games, right? Are those not games? Are they just puzzles?
I think some of those, I think they would be more along the line of puzzles, but I think a lot of them introduce this idea of multiple solutions, or like,
well, it's still,
yeah. I think fundamentally, yeah.
Like that Flow, remember? That used to be huge. It was a game where you had colored dots on a grid, and you had to draw lines between the two matching color dots, and none of the lines could cross, and you had to connect every pair of dots.
Mm-hmm.
So, my only
trivial mechanics, but, you know, puzzle.
My only thought about that is that I think it's a puzzle game because the puzzle is how you interact. Like I think it's hard to say because I can't speak for every game, but like, for example, I made a game that was like a puzzle game, but really once you knew the solution to a puzzle, it would be easy, right? If you knew everything. But the game element to me was that you had to do it in a certain speed, or you had to do it at a certain accuracy. And then you could unlock other levels and get coins to get this, to do that. And I think fundamentally the gameplay was just puzzles. If you knew the solution, you got it. But the game itself was everything that the puzzles created after that. You know, like,
wait,
if that makes sense.
So after you beat the puzzles, you could go back and do it again faster for points?
You could do it again without like making mistakes, right? So
you could make mistakes.
Yeah, you could make mistakes, but
isn't it trivial the second time?
Yeah, it's trivial, but once you do that, you get stars that allow you to unlock other things that you can do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like the compounding rules and the things that you can do within it, right? Like, my game wasn't like complex. I would say fundamentally it was just a puzzle, you know. But I think like games that are actually complex, that like that Flow game, I think have some game elements in it that are not necessarily the main mechanic, which is the puzzle, if that makes sense. Like, the puzzle itself, to me, is just a thing you do until you find a solution. But I think it's still fun, but I don't know, you know?
So I don't know if this would count as like a board game or tabletop game, but I think it kind of fits in there where, you know, you start off with a puzzle. Everybody knows the puzzle has one solution. But then, I guess what makes it a game or even a competition is how fast you can solve it. And that's with Rubik's Cubes. And so would Rubik's Cubes, are they considered puzzles? Or like what would you consider a Rubik's
puzzles.
Cube to be?
I think they're puzzles until you learn the algorithms for them.
Yeah. Because it seems like everybody knows how to get to the solution, but then it becomes about getting there first.
Yeah.
Right. So that's really interesting. I think if you're ignorant of a Rubik's Cube, it feels like a puzzle because you're like trying for different solutions and stuff.
Yeah.
I think the Rubik's Cubes are interesting because there's not like a mechanic that you're exploiting necessarily, or a pattern to exploit. It's just an algorithm that you just don't know. And maybe eventually you work your way towards some sort of intuition about it. But you can literally just memorize a set of moves and, memorize a set of patterns that should trigger those sets of moves.
Interesting.
And then it definitely moves away from Brad's, I guess, description of a puzzle game, because the high speed players, they get a randomized Rubik's Cube, and it isn't about like, oh, I don't know what to do, or like, it's literally a skill check. Like, how can I move my hands fast enough and think quick enough to like move through all the algorithms and react quickly enough? It really becomes like a video game, more like a video game, like as Brad was describing it.
Yeah, it's like the added mechanics make it a game, but fundamentally, everybody could solve it, right? Like every person in that competition could solve a Rubik's Cube. So like if they're like, whoever solves the Rubik's Cube is the best Rubik's Cube champion, then you'd have a million champions. So they had to add an extra rule or condition to like, to make it a
That's
game.
why they don't give every competitor like the same shuffle of a cube, right? Like they just shuffle it and it's random. And the point is to parse it out quickly and go through it, not to necessarily find the same solution as everyone else faster.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's. I mean, we're getting to the definition of the game, but I think that's where like traditional games are different, because like I've always thought as a puzzle as a game, but it's really just enjoyment at the end of the day, right? Challenge, because I don't have a super memory.
It's a more of a brain activity, I guess. I guess just activity versus a game. I guess you're doing something, but are you? I mean, maybe you're at play, arguably, but yeah, those things that kind of cross it over into game territory. Like you can play without playing a game, right? So those
you're losing me, man.
Yeah, I lost you. You said you're playing a game,
like, what?
right?
Yeah, I'm kind of losing myself. I'm trying to think it through, I guess.
This guy's getting lost in the sauce.
Yeah.
So, speaking of puzzle games and quick little things, speaking of solitaire, one cool thing about solitaire, and somewhat frustrating. So I've been playing during meetings, right? And my goal overall has been I want to get to the point where I'm consistently beating a game in 5 minutes. Obviously, if I have to like stop and like talk about something with a coworker, then I don't care. Like you can't pause the game. I'm not that heated about it. But yeah, that's just my overall goal. But what's annoying about solitaire is that because the deck is randomized, and because not every configuration is solvable,
Exactly.
Sometimes you just get stuck. And even if it started solvable, sometimes you make a move that's just bad, and then you've completely destroyed your game, and you might not even know it till later.
Yeah.
And there's no way to know because it's it's a lot of luck based, and so there's a puzzle solving aspect there where you're trying to like intuit your way through the best set of moves, but there's also a gambling aspect where it's like, maybe I can't even beat this. I might just have to re-roll, and I think that's part of the fun of some games where there isn't a solution, or there may not be a solution based on how bad your luck is.
That actually is so interesting that you're talking about that, because I was recently thinking about this, because I'm a nerd, a loser, and a game developer. Nerd. I was thinking about what if you removed, like from most games, the die element, right? So most games have a luck element. So a lot of times why you win or you lose is because of just physics. Like if you could perfectly master physics, if you looked at
roll a die perfectly.
Yeah, there's people who can roll a die like almost perfectly, but a lot of times it's like weighted dice. But they're cheating. But there are people who are like good at rolling something regularly. But anyway, my point is,
bowling.
Huh?
So I said bowling.
No, rolling. If you remove the die, right, and at the beginning of each game, you just showed people the roles that they would get, like, and everybody got the same role, how would it impact most games? You know, so in Monopoly, everybody gets the same role. The game would...
So you have seeds.
Huh?
You have seeds.
Yeah, I don't... What do you mean by that? Sorry.
Like, you show people a pre-configured set of roles. I assume that the roles are random, but they're not randomly generated each time. It's a pre-configured seed. It's like
like a procedural generated seed for like a map or something in Minecraft.
Yeah. But you can using the same seed, you can roll the dice and get the same
pattern.
The same pattern every time. That's what
based off of the algorithm that is doing the rolling behind the scenes, I guess you could say.
Well, I mean, in a computer, it's always an algorithm. So
yeah. So like think about Monopoly. If the seed was set, and if everybody had the same seed, Monopoly would fall apart, right?
Like every player,
yeah,
or
every
game?
player had the same seed.
Yeah. They'd land on the same spaces.
They would land on the same spaces, and fundamentally, Monopoly has to have that randomization per player, right? So every player would have to, at a minimum, have different seeds. Now, if every player had a different seed, I wonder how games would play out, because if you knew that your next roll was going to be a 6, right? And you were like, I'm going to roll a 6, so I'm going to land here. This player is going to roll a 4, and they're going to land here. That, you know, like, how would that change the dynamics of the game? And then, I know, Kyle, I don't know if you've ever played Chick-a-Pig, but imagine Chick-a-Pig, everybody had the same seed. 4, 2, 6, 3, 4, 2, 2, whatever. That game... You
don't roll the dice in Chick-a-Pig, do you?
You do.
Are there dice rolls in Chick-a-Pig?
Yeah, there's dice rolls for how many moves you can do, or if...
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, if you roll a 1, you can move a cow. If you roll a 2, you can get a daisy card or move your character. So, even though everybody has...
this game.
It's great. It's great.
It's pretty fun.
I actually made a digital version of it. I just...
No lie?
Yeah, like, I made the whole game. I guess I should make it multiplayer.
Yeah, release that junk, man.
Yeah, I forgot that I did this. I did it when we were living together, Steve, actually. I just was randomly... Oh, you know what it was?
You never let me play.
I wanted to make a digital version so me and Shailene could play together at all times.
I remember that. I did
at all times.
And you know why I stopped? Because when I got to the card conditions, like when you draw a card and it does something, I just was like, I don't feel like programming this into the game.
Yeah,
but
I remember you were showing me. We talked about this because you were gonna put the moves in like a Google sheet or something, which at the time I remember I thought was really awful, but whatever. And you wanted to be able to keep them for later. I think it was for rereading, but also for replaying scenarios, right? So that's your seed, or not seed, but that's your the scenario we're discussing, I guess.
Yeah, it's like a chess game when you can see all the moves that were made. I mean, since I ended up programming it, I could just save it in some type of file format, like a JSON or something. Sorry, we're getting nerd dev time. But really, I was just thinking about how removing randomness, like from play to play, how it would change how people interact with the game. You know what I'm saying? Like, how would, like in Monopoly, the game would probably fall apart if everybody had the same seed. But in Chick-a-Pig, you could still have a dynamic game, because even if you all roll a 2 on the same turn, you can do things differently. You know what I'm saying? Like, how you move your Chick-a-Pigs, if you get a card or not. So I was just thinking about how much randomness affects games.
I think then that comes down to, I guess it's not quite randomness, but you, rather than have the randomness start on the game mechanic level, it's in the player choice level. Like,
yes,
people can choose the different things. So
I think if you're talking about choice, you can't call it randomness.
That's what I said. It doesn't count as random, because it's
okay,
I mean it's in a set realm of conditions, but you don't know which one they're going to choose from your perspective. So yeah, it's not true randomness, but it is. You can't really determine always.
That's interesting too, because this is a tangent, I guess. The difference between randomness and uncertainty. Like, it's not, most randomness in our world isn't actually random. It's just uncertain. especially in the world of computers.
Yeah, because
and that's usually good enough for games. That's good enough.
Yeah, like random. There's no such thing as like an actual random number generator. It's already like,
well, there is. The Cloudflare uses their wall of lava lamps as a random number generator. That's pretty cool.
I said in a game sense, like like inside of a game, there's like truly no true randomness like that.
Well, there kind of exists. Can't be, because I think in a lot of ways you need to be able to anticipate at least the highest and lowest value.
I mean, you can do that with randomness. Random doesn't mean it can be infinity sometimes. It just means
you don't know what the next option.
1 to 100. Like, yeah, it could be anything.
Well, yeah, and I'm saying I think that's still yeah, but it's within. I guess it's saying the same thing again, within a set amount of conditions.
Yeah, random does not mean unbounded. It just means unknowable.
Unknowable, yeah. In a lot of games, for example, have you ever seen? There's a speed run for this old. It might have been not Final Fantasy, but the game where the characters look like Dragon Ball Z characters, but it's an RPG.
Dragon Quest.
Dragon Quest. How did I say Dragon Ball but not get Dragon Quest? Anyway, I think it was an old Dragon Quest. There's a guy
who Toriyama some respect.
Give him respect on my name. This guy did a speed run of a game that technically has random battles, but they're not random because he knows that if you move in certain ways, that like how it affects the bits you know what I'm saying? So he literally memorized every movement that you need to do, and it can be somewhat RNG in the sense that, like, even though he knows if I move this way, the probability of something happening, every once in a while, the worst possible condition will happen. Mm-hmm. And he can then recalculate in his brain what the next set of moves needs to be to reset the random number generator to be favorable to him from a percentage standpoint. It is one of the craziest speed runs I've ever seen in my life. And at the end,
that sounds awesome,
dude. I gotta share it with you. At the end, when he does the last dungeon, you need to have a certain ability to technically get through it, and all the enemies are super high level, and he did it without the ability, which was like a lamp. And he knew exactly how to beat every enemy or avoid every single enemy. And it's literally just a black screen. And this man just moving like in a pattern. Because it's also time-based, right? Because there's, like the way the loops work within the game and all that stuff. It is one of the most incredible. When he it's just pure silence for like 5 minutes of him doing it. And he finishes and everybody's like, oh my goodness. I just witnessed it. It is literally one of the craziest moments in, I think, speedrun. I'll share it with you guys in the Discord. It is.
So did he do that GDQ?
He did it live at GD2. It was so crazy. It was so crazy.
So not to brag.
But
when I was in elementary school,
I'm not racist. But
wow, why is that the comparison you made? I'm not racist. Are you kidding me? Jeez.
Because like the next thing,
I'm not racist, like, but I see that I'm the only white guy on this.
No.
I mean, you see that this is only voices.
You're also,
how can you tell?
Hispanic. You can be racist in multiple ways. You have multiple dimensions of racism. You can.
That's right.
You can tap into.
I have abilities you can't.
My racism is beyond your understanding.
Sorry. What were you saying?
What happened?
Not to brag. When I was in elementary school, one of the computer games they had us playing included a mini game that was, I think, like essentially Connect 4, where you drop your marker down in one of several columns. I might have mentioned this before. And this is you'll see what I'm talking about. So the game logic, I guess, had some sort of pretty simple algorithm for responding to my moves and trying to get 4 before I did 4 in a row. But whoever wrote it, I guess maybe didn't play test it that much, or it was just really simple. I found a set of moves that no matter what happened, every time, no matter how many times I did this set of moves, the computer would always react exactly the same way. and it was a winning set of moves. So I would win like 10 times in a row. And my, classmates are like, wow, how'd you do that? You're so smart. And I was like, yeah, but secretly I was only a little bit smart.
You just figured out the algorithm, like intrinsically you figured out, oh, if I do this and this and this.
Yeah, like the computer would make one of two moves to respond to my third or fourth move, but no matter which move it used, it was a losing move eventually. Like it didn't matter. But yeah, that's kind of what this guy did, right? Except he was fighting a random number generator and a Dragon Quest game. But I was in elementary school, so it's the same thing.
I can see young Steve now sitting at the computer, adjusting his glasses and saying predictable to the computer. Predictable.
You're already dead.
No, I mean, I actually know what you mean. I had this Connect 4 game, like to keep me and my siblings distracted on long road trips. My parents bought us these little cheap, like Game & Watch kind of games. And one of them was Connect 4. And I would play that junk so hard. And then eventually I realized if I went first, I could always win. Because all I had to do was put one piece in this location, and the computer would always respond with 2 or 3 moves. And then I put it in another location, 2 or 3 moves. And it didn't matter because the set was always bounded on what their reactions were going to be. They never, broke that script, Exactly. And so I would just do that, and I would beat them every time. And I would experiment with, how far I could mess with it. If I do it here, and then this, will this change it? And I would kind of slowly figure out the algorithm. And you know what I was going to say, Steve? That's the moment everybody should have known that we might be programmers. Or that you're going to go into physics. Oh, that makes perfect sense. Your mind already is working in figuring out algorithms from a young age. It's super funny.
And this is the moment I knew that you were born to be my nemesis.
I was already at the same time. Meanwhile, in the show, Steve,
it's like Megamind, where it shows the two the living situations that one has and the other.
The parallel paths that brought them to
the parallel paths
them to be enemies.
Now you must fight.
We got to play Connect 4. That's it.
Does that mean that you're Nega Steve?
Ooh. No. No, actually, I guess so.
What did he just call you?
Yeah, say that again. Say it again. I didn't hear that. Say it again. Say it again, Steve.
My mic's not.
Say it a little bit, but you got to say it a little bit faster. I want to make sure the world heard that. That's going to be the clip for the beginning of this. I'm going to bleep it. I'm going to say, does that mean that you're big Steve?
No, you could definitely bleep it so it sounds really bad.
Oh, no.
Man.
I didn't even, honestly, I didn't even catch that. Kyle was like,
I knew one of you would catch it.
Kyle caught it.
Well, before you got to saying the second half, which was just your name, I was like, what did he just
Kyle is on it.
Okay, I have a tangent, and I'm sorry, Steve, I'm about to call you out. So, okay,
here it comes.
At work, when we all used to work together, the genesis of Super Agile Bros.
Oh no!
There is.
I think I hate this.
At IBM, it was called. What was it called? The chat thing that they sunsetted.
Slack? Oh, not Slack. Sorry.
Same
time. And people would ping each other, right? That's what we say. Oh, somebody ping, because I always make that annoying ping noise that you couldn't get to silent no matter what you did. You couldn't disable it. But anyway, eventually, we were using group chats, right? And we had a group chat, and I think it was me, Steve, maybe Kyle was in there, and a few other people. I think Michael V was in there, and a few other people.
Hey. Yeah, and Dev.
And we were talking about something, and I'm very careful about how I say this because I want to make sure it makes sense. So we were talking about something, and somebody made a joke, right? Or I made it. Who knows who made the joke? And Steve said, "Man, that joke made me snigger." Right?
Ooh.
Laugh.
You still remember?
Oh, I will never forget this. Oh, I will never forget that. Because at that point, I was more or less quiet in the chat. Like, people were kind of talking. He said, "Oh, this thing made me snigger." Da 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 da. Right? And he said that, and then like the chat didn't like continue. And, and I just responded, like I waited and I said, I was like, "Steve, you may want to remove that word from your vocabulary in your texting, because one typo changes everything." Yeah. So, and I know Steve was literally using it in the dictionary defined word, but he was danger. This man has been towing the line from the beginning. I was like, one mistake, one stutter, you're done.
I do not remember if I said that word in good faith or not. I feel like I probably did, but part of me...
We were just talking.
Part of me... Yeah, no, but I wonder if part of me was like, I wonder if Brad's going to see this and get mad.
No, the thing is, like, I've heard you use that term, like, just generally, right?
In person?
Like, yeah, like, I've heard Steve generally use it, like...
Not recently.
It's a long time ago. Like,
yeah, it was a long
and, I sit there. I'd like to say that I'm Steve's, like, you know how people have on their shoulders, like, the angel?
You're my Jiminy Cricket.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just his dark-skinned, like... Jiminy Cricket.
Black Jiminy Cricket.
Yeah. I'm his black Jiminy Cricket. And I'm like, you wish upon a star, you'll get these hands.
You seeing stars.
You gonna get what you asked for. So I feel like I've always like just, like I know Steve has a good heart, but I'm generally that guy with a lot of people. I'm like, hey, you might want to reconsider how you say that.
Not everyone knows that.
Because if you come to my side of town and you said that, people would like you might get stumped out. So just be aware. You might want to remove that one from your vocabulary.
And I did.
So
like we said before.
Now I say nega Steve instead.
Good luck with that. I'm gonna let the internet decide about that one.
I could see, like, if you wrote that in Slack. Yeah, they show you the little the previews. You can see like many people are typing right now.
Steve has been removed from the chat. Like you see typing.
A Slack bot responds and it's like, we don't like that term around here. Try instead anti-Steve.
Yeah, like you see all the people typing and stopping and typing and stopping and it just going and then Steve all of a sudden is removed from the space and you're like, what? Like,
and then a black thumbs up emoji from somebody.
Oh, you're good to go. You're good to go.
Well,
dealt with. Oh man,
that was a conversation. Yeah. What were we talking about? We're talking about luck.
Yeah, you were talking about the Connect 4 game and.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Then you called me Nega Steve. Yeah.
Yeah, stop saying that. It's hurting my chest.
Remember, wish upon a star. Just remember the rest of that. Get these hands.
Well, do you guys maybe remember of? I guess the first time I've ever had the realization of meta in my life before. I didn't know what it was called at the time, but that's kind of, I guess, what you guys were figuring out against the machines in a way. The meta. So somebody taught me the meta for tic-tac-toe.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, word?
Yeah, when I was young, how you target, if you go first of all,
and you win.
If you do go first and you target the corners and you kind of box them in where when they get to a certain move, you automatically win.
Kyle was crushing little kids' hearts everywhere.
Oh, I was.
Yeah.
Insisting I went first.
It's like that game I was telling you, the one where you're supposed to pick how many balls you want to push down the chute, and then the computer or the game picks a number of balls.
Is that?
Yeah.
That's the meta is trying to figure out like what number of balls should I put down to win.
Is that game called Drop Ball?
No, it's not.
For all my fans of Adventure Time, Drop Ball. An exciting game for people everywhere. For people everywhere. Anyway, sorry. Go back.
Inclusive tagline.
Inclusive.
So one thing we were talking about earlier too, I guess, I don't know if there is a digital version of tic-tac-toe, but like I guess digital versions of traditional games. Would you say solitaire is like a good, I guess, representation of the real life game, Steve? The digital solitaire that you play?
Aside from the fact that you have to, that you don't have to set it up every time, and aside from the fact that there's a hint system now.
Oh, really?
What?
It's pretty. At least the program I'm using, there's a little hint system. It's not perfect. It's pretty vague hints like try getting cards down from the foundation. Usually when I'm stuck, it also gets stuck. So there you go.
Helpful.
But yeah, the mechanics are exactly the same. You pick up cards, you move them around. The only difference is that you physically can't make an illegal move. So that's one up over physical solitaire. If you don't know the rules, you can just screw it up.
Yeah.
That's one good thing about video games in general is that, you can't break the rules because there's not a button to do it.
You can't cheat on accident or on purpose because it won't let you.
Yeah.
I want to see solitaire on Boundary Break.
See the bottom of all the cards.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's actually, speaking of traditional and digital games, playing something like FIFA is really interesting because in FIFA, well, actually, I don't know this for sure, but I assume that there's not really any mechanic for dealing with handballs because you can't touch the ball with your hands. So there's no
a button
penalty kick for handballs.
Yeah, I wonder. I bet you in the newer ones that just like a lot of handballs are actually accidental. Like somebody's not trying to do it, but it doesn't matter. I wonder if because a lot of them are physics based now, if handball had to become a part of it because the ball could actually contact your hand. I think you're right. In the past, you couldn't get a handball because it was just...
Yeah, maybe in the past.
It was just if somebody sent a pass, there might be physics from moving from character to character, but once...
It was like a binary.
Yeah, but once it got within the character's zone, it just sucked to their feet
Yeah. I have seen kickball in the NBA games. Whenever somebody does a bounce pass and it hits someone else's foot.
Okay. Interesting.
But even then, it's not intentional, and it's probably pretty frustrating. I don't play a lot of the 2Ks, but I'd imagine that's probably a horrible thing because you probably go for the steal and then it hits your digital foot.
And it's over. I bet you there's people if those mechanics exist who have made a whole meta on forcing those kind of turnovers in penalties. So there's probably some level of rules to mitigate that, or the penalizing a handball is not as harsh as it would be maybe in a real game. Because at the end of the day, not everything is fun in a video game form.
Right.
You kind of have to translate it over. And
even
I think solitaire is the best version of solitaire when it's digital, just because at the end of the day, it randomizes it for you. There's less effort, and you don't need to have anything except for a digital screen, versus you need a table or a ground, or you can't play solitaire on the plane. You could, I guess you could play it on your little dinner table, unless they're lifting off or landing, but
good point.
So
you need a pretty good bit of space. I guess you have to have. They do make tiny cards.
What I want is a tiny foosball table.
I had a tiny table tennis table.
Ooh.
My parents.
So it's just tennis.
Yeah,
lap tennis.
My parents bought it for us for Christmas. It was so terrible. It was so hard to play. It was so hard.
This reminds me of is a taco a sandwich debate, but is a foosball table or air hockey table, are those tabletop games?
Literally.
Literally, yes. But
I think they're tabletop games.
They're in the tables.
But they're on top of, they might be recessed in the table, but they're still on the top surface of that table.
Recessed table games. Table recessed games.
Yeah. I mean, I think those are like fall within the category of like, I don't want to say bar games, but like games that you don't traditionally play unless you're in a particular setting, you know? Like,
that's a fair point.
Like you don't play what's that game you're saying? Not foosball, the one where you roll it up the thing.
Skee ball
in your house, just skee balling it up. Like, nah, you got to go to like a certain place, you know, an arcade or something like that.
That's true. Well, cool, man. I think we can, I guess, start taking this thing down for a landing. I have one final question for you guys, in the realm of traditional games, and I'll give you a choice. You could either pick your least favorite or your favorite traditional game, if you have one. I'll open the floor up to you first, Preston.
What is my least favorite and or my favorite board game?
Mm-hmm. I guess for a suggestion for the listeners.
So you want me to give suggestions or my favorite?
Ooh.
Because those are different. They're different. Because my favorite, I wouldn't necessarily suggest to everybody. But
which one are you gonna go with, Kyle? Fave or suggestion?
Snap. So it sounds like your favorite might be more interesting, I guess, because your suggestion might be more user friendly, but not as interesting.
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know either. Why would you do this to me?
Hey, you asked the question. I'm just asking for clarification. Don't get on me.
You could have just answered it. I wouldn't have known the difference. You could have lied to me.
I'm just trying to understand. But I'll just answer and say that my favorite game would have to be Scrabble. It's a game that I've played with my family for a long time. I'll crush most anybody in Scrabble if they're not like serious. Like I used to go when I first moved to Louisiana, go to the library and train with professional Scrabble people. And so I've learned a little bit, but I love Scrabble.
What?
I love word games. It's a whole nother story for another time. So that's all I got.
Yeah, let's make that another time. I don't want to hear that story.
Yes.
Were you there?
No.
No, I mean, I guess I was in Louisiana, maybe, but I don't remember anything about this.
Yeah, this is before Steve's time.
Before Steve.
Yeah, that's another story for another day.
Before I was born.
Quickly, Steve, what's your favorite, if you have one?
My favorite game probably would be Phase 10.
Oh, very good one.
I'm not particularly good at it. It's just a lot of fun. I like the different phases.
All 10 of them?
So, my favorite phases are 7, 4.
Yeah. I like that it's a game where you have to get runs and pairs / triplets and colors. I think that's like,
yeah,
the best of all worlds.
It deepens as you go. Very good game. So my favorite game, I guess I'll also suggest it right now, at least traditional, is Villainous by the Walt Disney Company. It's a pretty difficult game. Not a high skill ceiling, I would say, but it's
so not difficult.
I mean, it can. It's a steep learning curve, but once you got it, I think you got it. But I couldn't imagine that game being digital if you ever played it. It's like $60 if you want to try it. It's kind of expensive. Is that expensive for a board game? I don't remember.
Relatively, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, thanks guys for sharing your opinions about traditional games. I appreciate you letting me kind of take the reins a little bit today, Bradston.
You get used to it.
No, not a chance. But I just want to thank you guys. Thank you, Steve, for being here tonight.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. And my pressure.
Your pressure. And a formal thank you, Brad.
I only accept informal thank yous, but I will accept
Take this formal thank you.
You are clearly unschooled, but it's okay. Thank you.
Get learned.
Thank you informally. And you're welcome informally.
And a huge thank you to the Super Agile Nation, our folks in the Discord, everyone who always drops a like and a comment on everywhere we post, and just the great vibes that we continuously feel when we're making these podcasts.
Nice vibes.
We wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be nothing without every last one of you with your beautiful ears out there listening right now. So I implore you, have a great rest of the day. And catch us next time on the Super Agile Bros podcast. We are out. Peace.